And welcome into the Young Dad Podcast. Whether you're outside grilling, mowing the lawn, changing dirty diapers, or maybe, just maybe, you got a moment to sit back and relax and listen to your favorite podcast, whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, thanks for being here. And thanks for tuning in. And of course, thanks for telling a friend about the podcast as well. Today's episode is one every parent needs to hear because parenting is hard. And no matter how much we try to prepare our kids for the future, we sometimes feel stuck wondering how to help them navigate life challenges, develop confidence, and handle emotions in a healthy way. That's where life coaching for kids comes in. Our guest today, Renaye is a founder of Adventures in Wisdom and a pioneer in bringing life coaching to kids worldwide. Through her story-based coaching curriculum, Renaye has helped kids in over 30 countries build confidence, resilience, and self-leadership skills. She's also the author of A Parent's Guide to Life Coaching for Kids, where she explains how coaching is different from counseling and parenting and how it can help kids develop mental fitness and emotional resilience. So make sure you grab your juice box, grab a snack, and let's jump right into the conversation. Renaye, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
Of course, it's super excited to have you. So tell us a little bit about your journey into doing some life coaching for kids, how you got into it, and kind of what your story a little bit behind it.
Sure, Jay. I discovered the world of personal development right after graduating from college. And I remember thinking to myself, why did I learn this when I was a kid? It made no sense to me that the life coaching world, personal development world focuses on grown-ups when those core thoughts and beliefs that shape who we are and what we think is possible for our lives are formed when we're really young. And I knew that when I had children, I wanted them to learn this powerful way of thinking. And I'd become an expert in personal development, and I'd use my skills to create a very successful corporate career, happy, fulfilling marriage, relationships. And then when I did have children, this is all 23 years ago, I couldn't find anything out there to help them learn how to develop their mindset. Plenty on how to get my kids to behave, a few things on character development, but nothing on mindset development. And I started working with my kids when they were young, and sometimes it would feel and I didn't want my kids rolling their eyes every time I opened my mouth. So I started writing stories. And that really was when the magic happened, Jay, because they not only loved the stories, they were learning the concepts I really wanted them to understand. And from there, my vision just grew. I was like, wow, I really want to bring this to other children too. So I retired from my corporate job. I was fortunate enough to be able to take a year off and complete the curriculum and launched Adventures in Wisdom. And gosh, this was well over a decade ago. I'm just so honored that we have hundreds of coaches in over 30 countries who are using my work to help children learn about the power of their mind and the power of their thoughts to create confidence and resilience and self-esteem and just be who they're meant to be in the world. So that's journey in a nutshell.
Very cool. I love nutshell answers. They're always interesting. So why did all this? Why is life coaching critical for kids today? That's the question here. But because we hear so much about the mental health crisis in kids today, and I see it firsthand. Right, I work in mental health. That's my day job. I work in mental health. I work directly with kids and families and whatnot. And I'm telling you, it's 2025, where this is going to be coming out in the summertime. I'm telling you, we're almost through, the tail end of all these COVID babies going to school and whatnot for the first time. Or some of them, no, we're just barely getting started with some of them starting school, like going to preschool, kindergarten, things like that. They're just barely starting. And I'm telling you, there's something in the water with these kids. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it exactly, but these kids, like I have a bunch of 4, 5, 6 year olds that I work with that I see, boys and girls, and just it's sad because there's so many issues going on with them, and they're so young. It's like what is going on? Where is this coming from? And then you see the older kids too, right, that are now fourth and fifth graders, also having the same impact, where they're just feels like they're just a couple years behind on everything, socially, emotionally, especially socially and emotionally and behaviorally. They're just so far behind because they lost so many years because they were in kindergarten when it all happened, and they lost some really crucial years of development. So with all that, kind of just some context there, most parents only know about therapy. Traditional education is an option for helping their kids. So what is life coaching for kids essentially, and how is it different from therapy or just good parenting?
Such a great question, so much in there. And I tell you, Jay, your experience, we've heard from so many educators, so many school counselors, and parents themselves. And you're right, our children really are behind. If you look at how long a child's been alive and the fraction of those COVID years, it was a huge percentage of their life that was greatly impacted when they went through the pandemic, and the social emotional skills, academic skills. And when someone struggles academically, it tends to influence and impact their confidence and their self-esteem. And it's this vicious cycle. And we have seen it like crazy. So I guess one of the first questions to answer is, what is life coaching for kids? How's it different from counseling? Where does it fit kind of on the mental health continuum? So if you look at mental health on a continuum, you have mental wellness on one side, you have mental illness on the other side. So our counselors and therapists tend to, I mean, they can work across the whole continuum. However, they tend to really focus on children who are struggling a lot more, really getting back to a state of mental well-being where they can actually function in life, dealing with some of the more serious cases. Our life coaches work more on the mental wellness side, helping kids proactively build resilience and coping skills, develop their confidence and self-esteem, learn how to set and achieve their goals so that they can navigate those ups and downs of life, so that they can feel good about who they are, which is their self-esteem, and bounce back from disappointments. Because if you think about it, when faced with challenges and disappointments, most kids don't have the tools to handle them. And that's why they get down on themselves. That crushes their self-esteem. They give up on themselves. That crushes their confidence. And so what life coaches do is they really focus on that mental wellness and being proactive and helping children develop these skills so that they can use these skills to navigate life.
Very interesting. So how can this help parents more or less if their kid is struggling in confidence, self-esteem, or resilience?
I love that question because parents are always the most important person in a child's life. They are just that grounding influence. But sometimes our parents need a little extra support. I've never met a parent who didn't want the very best for their child to be confident and prepared to walk in the world with their head held high, just ready to be who they are in the world and to be happy. You ask any parent, what do you want for your child? And you'll always hear, I just want them to be happy. But it doesn't matter how much our parents love their children, or even us, we can't give them confidence, we can't give them self-esteem, we can't give them success in life, and we can't give them that happiness. But what we can do is help them to develop it themselves. And so our coaches work as part of the parent's team. So they're not there to replace a parent by any means. They're there to be part of that parent's team and helping the child have an emotionally safe space to learn and develop these skills, to talk about any challenges they might be dealing with, whether it's at school or even at home or with a sibling or with friends, and help them just learn how to use mindset skills to navigate these types of situations. So it really is powerful. And the parents who work with our coaches, who hire wisdom coaches, are engaged parents. They want the very best for their children. They're not like throwing their kid over saying, fix my kid. It's not that at all. It's working together to support that child in really being just ready to navigate life and being proactive about it.
I love that. So it's more of helping with a proactive approach then, right?
Exactly. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the analogy like to use is, just like an athletic coach helps children develop the skills, confidence, and ability to thrive in whatever their athletic event is, a life coach for kids helps children develop the skills, confidence, and ability to thrive in life. And it really is, I mean, I think that it'd be so wonderful if every child could have a coach and just someone there who could support them. And whether it's one of our coaches or a trusted mentor, just someone who's trained in mindset skills development. And it's also a skill set, things like learning how to set and achieve your goals, things like learning how to manage peer pressure and how to say no and stand up for yourself, learning how to develop self-leadership skills so you can be self-responsible. These are very core fundamental skills that are really critical for children. But as parents, there's not really a parenting manual out there. When I lifted my babies up, and I have twins, I didn't see any manual underneath them. And it's really a lot of them, thank goodness for like your podcast, so you're reaching dads, and other podcasts too, to help educate parents that there are resources available and help them know that there are people and tools available to support their children and to support them. My kids are 23 and I have a son and a daughter, and it was, it wasn't a perfect journey, but it was a lot of fun, and I got to put my skills to the test, that's for sure. I always say that parenting and having your own business, those are like two of the biggest personal development journeys you'll ever go on.
Yeah, no, parenting for sure.
Yes.
And then what if you do start a business or go into business in some kind and get to a high level, then that's definitely its own journey itself. And then trying to balance those two things together at the same time is even more of a challenge.
Absolutely.
But really fun. So I just want to play devil's advocate here for a second. Couldn't a parent just teach their kids these things themselves?
Well, they
So
absolutely can. They absolutely can. But the thing is, and Jay, how old are your kids?
They're little. I have a 8-year-old and a almost 5-year-old.
Okay, and you may have discovered this already, especially with your 8-year-old. Sometimes our kids need to hear something from someone other than their parent. And I can't tell you how many times coaches and parents have said, or like our coach will say, yeah, the parent will come in the room and the child's sharing what the session was about and what they learned, and the parent's like, I talk about that with them all the time. But the child doesn't hear it from their parent. They can hear it from someone else, from another third party, trusted advisor in that child's life. And I experienced that too with my own kids. And I would enroll someone to help, whether it was a family member or a friend or a coach if it was a sporting type event. We actually had one story. I was at a business networking event and sharing about what I did. And this man was a assistant football coach, and the head coach was a professional NFL football player, former NFL football player. And the coach's son wouldn't listen to his own dad about, direction and success on the football field. And so the coach would enroll the assistant coach in sharing certain lessons. Now, of course, he listened to him sometimes, but there are certain things that he enrolled the assistant coach in helping them get the message to the child. So some parents do coach their own kids. Others, they find it more effective just to work with a coach.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I just wanted to play devil's advocate there for a moment. I'm well
Go
aware of all
for it.
that myself, because trust me, I hear that all the time from parents. It's like, oh, we're trying to do. We just talked about that, last week or whatever. And I personally, when it comes to sports and whatnot, I enjoy coaching my own kids. Of course, depending on the sport, but I also, if it's a sport I'm really familiar with, or like baseball, for instance, I have a lot of experience in baseball. I played collegiately for a little bit, and so like I feel very confident to teach my kids and other people's kids that sport. Very confident compared to someone who's just kind of doing it because they needed someone to say yes and they have no clue kind of thing. Versus, that's something different, right? I can help instill that confidence and be a good guider there for my kids and whatnot. But now it's soccer. Now we're doing soccer this year, and it's to be determined how that goes because I'm helping with my youngest daughter's team, a 4 and 5-year-old little girls, and I don't know anything about soccer, so we're learning along the way as we go. So it's really fun.
They're just like the little mob running around on the
I know
field.
they're so adorable. They're
It
also
is
little and
adorable.
they're also adorable, and they're just. I can't wait to start to see their like personalities and stuff come out a little bit more.
Yeah.
One of them, her personality was already on full display. I was like, "Whoa, you are not shy at all." Uh, but they're so bubbly and so energetic. They're adorable.
Yeah.
Anyways, so you personally you use coaching. You use stories in your coaching. That's how we're gonna phrase that right there to help kids build their mindset and emotional intelligence. So why are stories effective for you in working so well with teaching kids confidence, problem solving, and these leadership skills?
Yeah, so that's what makes our coaching curriculum so unique, Jay, is that it uses coaching stories written in a fable format to help children learn these skills, to help lay that foundation of knowledge. And then we have child-friendly discussion questions and activities to support children and really having an opportunity to experience those skills. But the reason why we use stories, there's several reasons, but the number one is proven brain science. Because when we hear a story or actually when we're listening to facts, we'll talk about that first. The part of our brain that's stimulated is the part that turns words into meaning. But when we hear a story, not only is that intellectual region that turns words into meaning stimulated, so are the emotional regions of our brain as we imagine feeling what those characters are feeling, and the sensory regions of the brain as we imagine experiencing what the characters are experiencing. So this is going to use more of the brain, which creates a stronger memory around both the stories and the lessons from the stories. Stories are also such a great way to help kids learn how to navigate life. Jay, most kids don't like to talk about being nervous or being afraid. They love to talk about grungies and dragons. And these are some terms from our curriculum that give children a safe way to talk about how they're feeling and what they're thinking. And it really supports them in understanding their emotions and understanding their thought patterns and how they can choose something different. It's also a non-threatening way to help kids learn. Well, I'd say, learn how to navigate life, but also they can see the situations from the stories and the characters and situations in those stories, and that helps the coach help them apply it to their own lives. So that's the power of the discussion questions and the activities as well. They're engaging and fun. So it really does add that emotional connection during that coaching process. And it's so powerful. It's another kind of an example of this is when we teach children about having an I can do it mindset, the story we use is called Canville and Can'tville, of two towns. And whenever we have a child who might be getting down on themselves thinking they can't do something, well, we just ask them the coaching question: what would this look like if you're living in Canville? So that's going to take them back to the story and remembering how they can approach that situation more powerfully using the skills that they've been learning. So it's our coaches are constantly going back to the stories, going back to the characters in order to help anchor the lessons and help the children apply these to their own lives. Plus, they're
Interesting.
fun.
Yeah, no, I love that. It doesn't sound like it's so much more about it's about the story, yes, but it also sounds like it's very much about giving kids a language, right? Helping kids
Absolutely.
develop a language to be able to communicate in, right? That's one of my
Yes.
big focuses, right? In my work, especially with like the younger kids or even like the older kids too, because they don't have it either. But parents are constantly frustrated. It's like, oh, they just don't know how to express themselves, or it's like,
That's because
well, it
they're
doesn't sound like
kids.
you do either. So obviously, no one's learned a language here. No one's
Right.
learning language of expression. So let's break this
Yes.
down. Let's break this down to something super simple. Parents, when's the last time you guys used an I feel statement? Something super simple. They got all tongue twisted. They don't use it. So granted, there's not even a basic language of that. They just said, well, they just need to be able to express themselves. Okay, well, how do you express yourself if you don't have the words to use it, right? And then you think about that, like they're a child, they only have so much language and whatnot, and they don't have a language in this aspect, and then you're just expecting them to do something that they just really can't do because they have no clue how. They don't have any
Yeah.
words to identify. They've never been through anything or had any like help to learn like, okay, I'm feeling this right now because of this is happening, right? They don't have those like
Exactly.
connectors in the brain,
Yeah.
right? Through
Well,
any
the
kind of
emotional
language.
amygdala is not connected to the frontal lobes because the frontal lobes aren't fully developed, where the
Hmm.
critical reasoning is occurring. And even as you know, for adults, when we're upset and we're in our amygdala and feeling all of our feelings, it's hard to jump into the analytical thinking through, okay, why am I feeling this? And it's one of the reasons why we teach children first to notice the grungies because they don't have to identify exactly what the feeling is. They just know they feel off. And same thing with us as grown-ups. And then we examine, okay, what are we thinking? Because our thoughts create our feelings. So what thoughts are going through our head? And that can help identify the emotion, but also identify ways to shift that thinking to be more empowering for a child. It's so powerful. And this is the critical tool that we use for coaching adults as well, is learning how to identify thought patterns and shifting those thought patterns. And we have really fun ways to teach that to kids.
Yeah. No, I love that. And you're right. It's not connected, right? It's not connected for adults. It's not even connected for most adults, I feel. Anyways, because we're so underdeveloped in everybody. Especially now more than ever, I feel like it's more underdeveloped. And that part of the brain to connect the emotional part to the logical part, it's a lot easier for most men to do that just because of how the man brain is. It's kind of one track, very kind of pre-wired in that way. So it's a lot easier for men to kind of do that and compartmentalize. But it can be really hard to teach our kids to compartmentalize those different emotions and to understand where they're coming from, why I'm having them, what I can do about them, and all those things. But you have to have a language to be able to start there. If you have no language and you go to Spain or somewhere where they speak a completely different language and you don't know what they're saying, you don't know what they're asking you, you don't know how to communicate, well, you're gonna go hungry. You're gonna be very tired. You're not gonna have anywhere to sleep or to stay or where to go. You're gonna have no idea because you don't have a language, right? You're trying to navigate something that you don't have language for. And even being able to have a story or an example or put yourself into something helps create that language. It can help create that language with yourself. And I love the storytelling aspect of this too, right? Because kids love to tell stories, especially kids that may have some kind of mental illness or mental health difficulty they're going through. Because that's really the only way that they know how to express themselves. That's really the only thing they can think of because they hear stories in school, they have story time. They read a lot of books and things like that. So they're able to kind of fabricate a story. And a lot of parents, shut that down. They shut those story down really quickly. It's like, no, 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 don't shut that down. Listen a little bit more, and you're gonna guess what? They're gonna tell you what's going on in that story, believe it or not. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, believe it or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But how could parents at home use this kind of storytelling concept to help their kids navigate the challenges that they go through on a regular basis?
So great question, Jay. And whether it's we actually give a free story away on our website to help children learn how to develop the skill of positive self-talk. And self-talk is so critical because every moment of every day we're saying something to ourselves. It's either building us up or tearing us down. And it's directly impacting our confidence, our self-esteem, our ability to bounce back from frustrations and disappointments, and even what we create, what we feel like we can achieve and succeed within life, and of course our happiness too. And so we give this one away for free, and it would give parents an opportunity to start seeing how stories can be used to work with children. Whether they wanted to become a coach or certain a path for that, or just use stories that are in the child's playroom and just see, okay, how can I extend this and use this to help my child? Because most stories do teach a lesson. What's so unique and different about ours is it's a coaching curriculum. So it teaches 27 mindset skills through a path. And we also teach children the brain science behind personal development mindset skills. Why do these skills work? And my background from years ago was actually in engineering, and I like to know how things work. And so when I first discovered personal development, I'm like, okay, well, this sounds kind of woo-woo. Why does this work? And so and that was decades ago. And since that time, we now with neuroimaging and so much other things, we can tell exactly why it's working. We can see what's being triggered in the brain. We know the brain science behind why personal development skills work now. But back when I was first reading and learning about it, we didn't have all that imaging technology, but we have that now. So we helped kids learn the brain science behind why these skills work.
Interesting. No, and I work in mental health, and sometimes I'm still like, oh, that's kind of woo woo. I still think that a lot of times about something because
But
they
if
just
it works, then I'll say woo woo work. Let's do it.
yeah.
Yeah.
The woo is kind of out there sometimes though, so it's like I think I'm gonna stick to what I know. I'm gonna stick to what I know works the majority of the time. If I really need to go woo woo, then we'll go woo. Or if someone brings me something woo woo, it's like, can we simplify that? Maybe find an alternative route that's maybe a little bit more grounded in a typical psychological theory, not something you saw off TikTok from some random person. So
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. But
a
and
lot of
it's
perspective.
really about bringing it back to the brain science. Why is this working? Why does that happen?
Yeah, let's bring it to something grounded in, where we
Exactly.
have some evidence-based practices here. Let's bring it back to that.
Yes.
Always trying to bring it back to that. Okay, so you were just mentioning, some of this the mental aspect of it here, right? And you particularly call, and we mentioned it a couple times already today, mental fitness.
Yes.
So can you define what mental fitness is? Like, what does that mean, and how can parents kind of start building this at home a little bit?
Yeah. For me, mental fitness is our ability to navigate situations in life and to keep moving forward. Even in our language is a big part of that. The development of these skills is a big part of this, and having these tools to help us create success in our lives. So let's talk about, we talked about shifting our thinking. So we can talk about that a little bit. We can talk about maybe goals and how that fits in too. I think that'll help paint the picture on the mental fitness. And one of the things that we talk about too is starting your day with goals and gratitude. And that really supports us in our mental fitness because with gratitude, we'll start with that first. That has us focusing on what is working in our lives. And it also helps it release endorphins in our body, which helps us feel good about ourselves and whatever's going on in our lives. And then goals, that gives us some sort of direction and programs our brain to focus on helping us achieve whatever our goals are. So we'd always start the day with goals and gratitude, and I still like to do that. And I think it's a really positive way to start out the morning. But then we think about our thinking and shifting our thinking. And this is really a great way to start working on the mental fitness. So what we teach children is when you're feeling those grungy feelings, examine thoughts. And a lot of times children, especially younger children, need support in understanding what those thoughts are. And that's through conversation, or it could be through play or through stories, depending on the age of the child. But just a classic example, something that most kids will deal with is once they're in school, let's say they get a bad grade or they fail a test. A lot of times for kids, if that happens, it's like, oh my God, I failed. I'm such a failure. Yeah, they just immediately label themselves as a failure. And those thoughts are going to cause certain feelings in their body, which is going to drag them down. And so what we'll do through coaching, and what a parent can do as well, is think, okay, how do we shift that thought in a way that supports us? And working with the child to brainstorm ideas. And it's really powerful for children when they realize that it's just a grade. It just means they didn't learn the material well enough. and put together a plan on how to approach this. Maybe they study harder next time. Maybe they can ask the teacher for extra credit. And this helps the child focus on solving a problem at hand as opposed to feeling bad about themselves. It puts their mind in a completely different mindset. So just like when your kiddos are playing soccer and someone's going to miss a goal and they're going to be really upset about it. And they might think, oh, I'm no good at soccer. I can't play soccer. And for little kids, we see these extremes, right? One bad thing happens and they think, oh, the whole world is ending. And it's helping them see that this is just a little event. Yes, you missed the goal, but that doesn't mean you'll miss the next goal. Or maybe in practice, we'll do 10 extra shots on goal from this side of the field. So you build your confidence in shooting that particular shot. So that's really what that's about. And then I mentioned goals. And for goals, it's really about there's a part of our brain called the reticular activating system, which helps us identify things that are important to us. So whenever we set a goal, it helps us identify that. Let's say, for an example, a child wants to have a hamster as a pet and the parent says, well, okay, well, tell me, learn about hamsters, or, and we'll talk about it and decide if you're going to have a hamster or not. And, the child might be at school later that day and notice a book on hamsters. And it's because that's something they're interested in. They've told their reticular activating system, I am interested in learning about hamsters, so I can tell my parents why this is a good idea for me to have a hamster in class. They might be, walking along and hearing somebody else talk about a hamster. And it's because hamsters on what we call their radar, on their brain's radar, to help them to achieve that goal. That's just like a little goal idea. But, for kids, having a hamster could be a really, really big goal. Yeah.
No, definitely. That's important, right? Those goals and having that motivation there. And then also being grateful. I work with a lot of kids. A lot of kids have no sense of gratitude. Kids, especially probably older kids, maybe not like the youngest elementary kids, but the older elementary kids, and that's kind of where it starts. There's this sense of entitlement that sets in. And so instilling that sense of gratitude with our kids is really, really, really important.
Well, and it's a skill. It's something for people to understand. It's just like when kids are really, really little, we teach them about saying please and thank you. Okay, well, what's the why behind that? Why do you say thank you? Why are we, and it's not just thank you to a person, it could just be thank you for whatever circumstances you might be in. It might be, having a good breakfast, or being able to have your favorite shoes that you wear to school that day. And it also is putting the mind on alert to look for things that are more positive, for things that are working in your life. And like I said, it releases endorphins and feel-good hormones all through our body. Whenever we express gratitude, it's one of the fastest things to help us shift our mood, especially when we've had a big disappointment.
Definitely. And it's really easy to feel disappointed. And, that's where having this confidence that you talk about, this mental fitness that you talk about, to build that resilience, to be able to overcome, to persevere, to get back up when things get difficult is really important. Something you also mentioned in your work as well, in general, is also yo-yo self-esteem. Can you explain what that is just a little bit here for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So yo-yo self-esteem is a term that I coined to help people understand that what happens with yo-yo self-esteem is that if something happens in life and it's good, we feel good. And if something happens that's we deem as bad, down we go. So for example, get an A on a test, feel good. Get a C, go crashing down. Score the goal in soccer, feel good. Miss the goal, go crashing down. And our self-esteem just kind of goes up and down because we're basing our self-esteem from the outside in, based on what's happening, based on the events. And so it's really important for children for us to help them learn how to separate events from who they are. Because events are neutral. We define what that event means based on how we choose to think about it. So the example I just used about the test, failing a test, that's the event. So a negative way to think about that is, failed a test, I'm a failure. A more positive way to think about that is, I better study harder next time. Maybe I can ask for extra credit. So that enables a child to feel a little bit more empowered about the situation. Yo-yo self-esteem is really about instead building our self-esteem from the inside out based on who we are. And so for children, what we teach them, the kind of the approach that we use for teaching them about self-esteem is, first we teach them about what self-esteem is. Kids hear terms like self-esteem or even confidence, and they may not really understand what that is. So we actually have a story that teaches what that is, through illustrating with the characters. And then the next thing we do is we really help them explore and learn how to honor their uniqueness and the uniqueness of others, because that helps them feel good about themselves, no matter who they're with, because it helps them really honor who they are. and understand that not everybody's like them. And then the other thing we teach in self-esteem is to how to separate events from who they are and to realize that this is what happened. That's not who I am. And who I am is how I choose to respond to things like that. And it takes practice. This isn't something you just do one time and oh, all of a sudden we're in positive thinking mode. I mean, I'm constantly working on shifting my own thinking based on events. It's a constant practice, especially for our kids because they're learning a new skill.
And we have to, keep working on it, right? Because it's always a new skill. It's always something that
Yes.
we got to work at and continue to get better at, even as adults. Uh, so is there anything that parents can do specifically to help develop this confidence that isn't tied to success or some kind of external validation?
It's about more making comments around effort versus results. So, wow, you really worked hard at practice today. You must be feeling good about yourself. And it's also, for parents, instead of saying, I'm proud of you, it's like, wow, you must feel really proud of yourself. If children are always listening for the I'm proud of you from their parents, that's what they're going to be craving. They're looking for that little reward. What's really important is for children to learn how to feel proud of themselves, and how to feel proud of themselves. The best way to do it is through their effort and how they're handling situations, not just on the result that happens. And yes, they could be excited if they win first place and get the trophy. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's also about commenting on, recognizing, and acknowledging how children handle situations, even when things don't go their way, and guiding them. Kids don't know how to navigate life, and most grown-ups don't either, to tell you the truth, Jay.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that you mentioned, effort over result.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad you brought that up because I feel like we're always so focused on, as parents, we're always so focused on the result that we forget about the process, right? We forget about all the things in between. And that's like a really important thing with like sports too in general, right? When we think about sport, is that you get so focused on the end result, right? You get so focused on what comes out at the end, the trophy, the accolade, the batting average, how many touchdowns, how many goals, whatever sport you're playing, right? How many points you score, that you forget about the process of it with your kid. You can look at you can go box score chasing all day and focus on that end result all you want, but man, are you missing out on all? Is your kid learning how to dribble better, basketball or soccer? Are they able to kick from 5 yards back more versus where they started? Can
Yep.
they actually throw the ball from third to first now? Right? They couldn't do that last year. Are we forgetting all these little things along the process that makes the kid fall in love with the game? But now they're not getting celebrated by anybody that they're improving, especially not the biggest person, the person they want most to watch that they're improving and to recognize it. They're just, because they see, oh, they're just focused on the game. They're just focused on when I get hit or if I get the out kind of thing. They're not seeing everything I'm doing along the way. Or same with grades, right? It's the same with grade. It's an easier one to kind of put into terms here,
Yeah.
right? We just want our kids to get good grades, A's, B's kind of thing. But we don't see the process of the progress that it takes to go from an F to a C to a B to an A. We don't recognize that along the way. We just want the end result of the A, but we fail to recognize, holy crap, you went from an F to a C. That's a big deal. 20%. You went from a C to a B. That's a hard 10%. And then you went from a B to an A. That's a really even harder 10%. Because now you're refining so much more. Like we got to celebrate the process along the way, like you're saying here. Really important.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. And what's really interesting too, Jay, I mean, I feel like childhood is such a great time for them to explore lots of different interests. And if a child gets so locked into being the best and getting a trophy and driven towards that, but it's not really something they love to do, then they're missing out on getting to explore other things too. So it really is about balancing, exploring different interests, plus achieving goals. I think it's always great to have goals and something to focus on, but making sure that they're not racing up that ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall, so to speak. And same thing with us adults.
No, we have to keep our focus where it needs to stay, and we have to celebrate along the way. It's really important to celebrate. What gets celebrated gets repeated, 100% of the time.
Absolutely.
Sometimes as parents, we feel like we should be able to do it all, right? Like especially dad, right? I feel like I'm a do-it-all dad. I'll work, I'll coach, I'll do all these things, I'll podcast, I'll do all these things, right? But the reality is, we all need a team to support our kids. We have to be able to kind of think of ourselves as a CEO, and we have to be able to what's the word I'm looking for here? Not delegate, but outsource some things, right? Because there's some things that we can't do. A lot of things we can do. A lot of things we can't. There's some things we can't do. So not a lot, but some. So when should a parent consider adding some kind of coach to their parenting team?
Yeah. Well, I actually have a checklist. It's on our website. You can download it for free. Give them some guidance as far as when it might be a good time. So the first category of questions is around how's your child feeling? So if you see your child a lot of sadness or getting down on themselves or frustrated or get angry quickly and they're as a parent they're just not able to support that child, that might be a really good time to engage a coach to help give that child another avenue, another safe space to kind of explore what's going on in their lives and how to help them learn how to navigate those. And then, what are they doing? A lot of times is they may see certain behaviors. It could be cheating. It could be not doing their homework. It could be not, complaining or not doing their chores, too much screen time, those types of things. And again, if the parent's having trouble supporting the child and making better decisions around that, coaches are fantastic for that, especially when it's things like screen time and homework and the whole self-responsibility kind of things. And then, what does the child want? If a child has a certain goal, something that they're wanting to achieve, it's a great time to engage a coach, a mindset coach, because not all sports coaches engage the mindset side of things. They know it's important, but they don't know how to proactively help the child in developing that. Or maybe the child has a goal to improve their grades or to make a certain team or to win a certain competition, and having a coach there really helps. And then also for a lot of our parents who hire coaches, they love personal development. They've seen their own personal growth in going through personal development work, whether it's trainings, podcasts, workshops, whatever it is that they've done, and they want that for their own children too. And sometimes they feel like they're the ones who want to help their children develop these skills, and sometimes they want to engage someone else to help them develop these skills. So those are kind of the four key areas, and then we have kind of a series of questions underneath each one of those. And again, it's for free on our website at adventuresinwisdom.com underneath for parents. We have that resource. We have a resource there about the mental health continuum and where coaching can fit in versus counseling, and just to give them some ideas around when it might be a good idea to add a coach to their parenting team.
So how can I guess a follow up question on that too is, so if parents are interested in finding a coach for their kids, what should they look for in a coach? Because I'm gonna be honest, I've talked a lot of crap on coaches in the past on the podcast because I've interacted with a lot of quote unquote coaches that just spent a couple $100 on a course and got a little certificate. They have no effing clue what they're doing. Uh, there's a lot of those. There's a lot of just I call them TikTok coaches or Instagram coaches
Yeah.
or social media coaches that don't really know a lot about what they're doing. They're just doing it because maybe they're good looking or they wanted money or something like that, or it was something, right, that they can just say that they're doing something with their life, I guess, for mom and dad to keep funding their lifestyle or whatever. I think I am doing something with it, but I just need this money, kind of thing. Anyways, I digress there. But I think a lot of coaches don't really know what they're doing, and it's really easy to get caught up in, oh, well, this person looks great, and then you spend all this money, and it's like that was worthless, and nothing like that. So what should parents be looking for in a coach um, that can help them feel confident in working with them, spending their money, and whatnot?
That's a great question. The most important things, or several things, what type of process does a coach use with their child? What's the intake process? What's the coaching process? And having that conversation. And all coaches should have some sort of a conversation intake process with parents before they ever move forward in any type of coaching agreement. And most coaches have an opportunity to meet the child as well, because if the child's not open to coaching, it's a waste of money, because you can't force someone to do something like coaching. It has to be something they have to be excited about in order to, they're going to want to make that team, or they're going to want to make better grades, or they're going to have more peace in the house, so they're not always getting in trouble and losing their game time, screen time, or whatever. And it's really about that. So what is the program and process that the coach will use with the child? And rapport as well. I mean, how is the communication? What is the rapport between them and the coach? And then, background and experience as well, especially if the child has some sort of additional challenge, whether it's learning differences or maybe neurological issues, then you'll want someone who specializes in those areas too. So it's just really about having the conversations a good fit and seeing what the background of that particular coach is as well.
Love that. Thank you. That's great.
Just the thing I'd love to just leave everyone with, Jay. I've been doing this for well over a decade, and I still have people say, wow, I didn't know life coaching for kids was a thing. And we're really working to get the word out and let parents know that there are additional support resources out there for them to support their children in being proactive in building their confidence, their self-esteem, setting and achieving their goals, navigating life, long before counseling is ever needed. And of course, if counseling is needed, there's nothing wrong with that either. I mean, our mental health and our children's mental health is so important. And luckily, there's a lot of resources out there to help support them. So, just helping get the word out. And if you know someone whose child might be struggling a little bit or has a certain goal, share with them, hey, I heard this podcast. There's this thing called Life Coaching for Kids. Go check it out. This might be a good fit. And like I said on our website, I would also encourage people to go get that free coaching story on building positive self-talk, because it'd be a great opportunity for parents just to kind of experience what coaching is all about and what mindset skills are all about as well. Yeah.
Here, kind of my fun. I have fun doing it because I know the questions and you don't. But it's always really interesting to get everyone's answers. So the first question here in the dad zone is, does pineapple go on pizza?
I like pineapple on pizza, especially if it has ham.
Okay. To each their own. That's fine. This has been a really great, beneficial episode for the people, so I will still air it despite a wrong answer on that question.
I didn't say it's my favorite kind of pizza, but if I'm going to have pineapple on pizza, it's going to have ham too.
There,
and green pepper. And green pepper too.
Okay. Respect it. To each their own. Like I said, I'm learning to be more open-minded on this question. Not so hard-nosed. But I've asked over 200 people this question, and they're pretty close. It's about like a 55-45 split in favor of no to yes. Really close there. I'm still, ongoing research, of course, in time. Who are 3 people, dead or alive, that you would invite to a dinner party with yourself?
Oh my goodness. So, my grandmother, I would love to have her at a dinner party. Who else would be interesting to talk to? It's such a good question. I hadn't really thought about that. I would love to have a conversation with Oprah Winfrey as well, because I just love her story and her background, and love, of course, personal development work too. And always like having my husband as well.
Very cool. I love it. What is your guilty pleasure food?
Food-wise?
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of a savory person than a sweet person. I like pizza. I like Mexican food. I live in Texas, so lots of Mexican food.
Good. Very good. My guilty pleasure food at the moment is Uncrustables.
What is it?
Uncrustables.
What is that?
It's like the little Uncrustable sandwiches, like the peanut butter and jelly ones that have like the crust on
Okay.
it already. Oh, so good. So delicious.
That's awesome.
Can't go wrong with a good Uncrustable. You never can. Anyways, I digress. I just was thinking about, I'm going to go have one after this. Breakfast time. But anyways, Renaye, what is one piece of advice that you would offer to a young parent, 18 to 22 years old, who's just starting out their parenting journey? One piece of advice that you would offer to them.
Oh my goodness, that's such a great question. Enjoy the journey. And it is a journey. I also encourage you to learn about child development. And I think that really helped me a lot, is to understand what a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old is going through in different stages of life. It helped me understand and manage my own expectations, but just to enjoy the journey and create those presence moments, because that's really the only way to slow down time. And it is so precious, because you only raise a child once. Once they graduate and they're gone, they're gone. And you don't have another opportunity to go back and go to that baseball game or go to the event at school. So really prioritizing that as well. And I know it's hard. I've always been a working mom, and I started my business when my kids were 8. But one of the beautiful things about it, even though I never worked more hours, I was able, because I had control over my schedule, I was able to cut out when I worked. And so I made my kids events at school, and I was able to take them to practice and go to their games and all that kind of fun stuff. So designing your life, if at all possible, to be able to be really present and engaged in your children's lives, because they will remember it, and it will create this connection that will last even when they leave.
And kids are going to remember who showed up 100% of the time. They're maybe not going to remember how that soccer game went. They're not going to remember how many home runs they hit. Or they might. But they're not going to remember all this little stuff, right?
Yeah.
They're going to remember who showed up, when
That's
they
right.
showed up, how often they showed up.
Yeah.
And make sure that you're the most active person there.
Yeah.
100%. I love that. So Renaye, this has been a great conversation for parents who want to help their kids develop confidence, resilience, and mental fitness. For parents who want to learn more and get started at home, Renaye has an amazing free resource, a coaching story, like she's mentioned a couple times, from her curriculum that will help parents see firsthand how stories can build confidence in their kids. So if everyone would give me 1 second, hold tight there, everybody, audience. So if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, you'll be able to see this pulled up here in a second. I have it ready. So this comes from adventuresinwisdom.com. That's adventures.com. And then right here is the website, the free story. I imagine you would click the free story if you're here for the first time. And then bada bing, bada boom, you get the free coaching story right here. Really cool. So this is the website where you can get everything for parents. It's coaching right for your child. We talked about that a little bit. So really cool website here. Great resource here for if you guys want to get started with Renaye and kind of understand, what it's all about and kind of dip your toes into it, test the water out a little bit, see if it's going to be up to your speed, up to your liking. So yeah, listeners, make sure you go grab that free resource because free resources they're free resources. Can't say no. But if you're interested in life coaching for your kids, or even becoming that for your kids, check out Renaye's book, A Parent's Guide to Life Coaching for Kids, on Amazon or wherever you get books.
It links over to the Amazon. That's correct. Yeah. And we've got it
Very
like
cool.
less than $10. It's really, really inexpensive. It's about getting the word out, not about making bucks.
I love that. I love that. And then again, to our listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you rate, review, and share the episode with another parent who could use this info today. And remember to also head over to youngdadpod.com, click on the resources tab, and you'll be able to get a free interactive activity guide to match this episode, full transcript, and other stuff over there on the website. Some really cool resources I have over there for free for people as well. So until next time, keep showing up for your kids, keep building their confidence, and we'll see you next time right here on the podcast.